All right, we are back here on the podcast talking about the premiere of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the second MCU TV series, not counting all the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all those things happened back in the day. Joining me today, somebody new on the Marvel scene on the podcast, but good friend of mine. He's going to be on soon talking some golf as well. Dan DeMartini is here. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back for this one. Obviously, we're getting into the heart of the golf season, but right now it's chilly and cold. I know it's nice in the Northeast, but not a great time down south for golf. So looking forward to talking a little Marvel while I'm stuck indoors in the cold and rain.
By define cold in Florida.
It was in the low 60s today.
Yeah. It was in the low 60s up here too. It was a nice weather day.
I figured as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're used to mid 80s and sunshine at this time of the year already. So winter is very short in the south. So
the difference here is that you went from 80 to 60. We went from about 30 to 60. So it's a jump up for us, a jump down for you.
Yeah, you guys are looking up. This is great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for people who are listening to this, not in the real time, obviously, recording on Sunday night, I was outside today. I was calling a soccer game for Iona College. So I got to be outside on top of the press box. A very nice day, nice cool breeze, 60 degrees, and they won the game. So all good.
Wow. Well, it looked beautiful up there from everything I could see. I saw your Instagram photo. It was definitely 20-mile-an-hour winds and absolutely cold here. So at least for my Florida self, I couldn't handle it. But I'm glad you guys are getting back out. New York and the Northeast really needs it. So
yeah, we do. And let's talk about the weather here. Let's talk about some Marvel here. And I did a ton of WandaVision on the podcast. I know you watched the whole thing through. What was your big impression on that whole series?
Yeah, I loved it. I know the big criticism was that it was a little slow and that, the first few episodes, people weren't 100% into it. I knew that there had to be some sort of meaning behind the whole changes of the decades. And I have loved the tie-in that, Wanda is severely traumatized by what happened. And, just kind of understanding how, therapy and things like that work, everything is usually based off your childhood and things that happened to you growing up in your environment. So I love the fact that, they targeted certain portions of her life and kind of explained it through the show. No spoiler alerts for those that were listening in, but there's a connection to what her extreme loss and it seems to be a recurring theme through all of Marvel is how do these people pick up the pieces? How do these heroes pick up the pieces? So I love everything that they do. And to be honest, just reading the comics growing up, Scarlet Witch and Vision was kind of one of my favorite after Deadpool and the Hulk. So I just really enjoyed seeing them give her as a standalone character her due because she's obviously an incredibly powerful superhero and I was all about it. I couldn't wait till Friday morning when I could wake up, grab a cup of coffee, and watch the episode right when it launched.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun show for sure. And this is a different show about Falcon Winter Soldier. I mean, the trailer just tells you it's like, hey, this is not the same thing. It's more of a traditional Marvel. Here's some action. Here's some quips. Here's some fun stuff. So, what was your expectations going into this show?
Yeah, absolutely. My expectations were very high because WandaVision just was so out of left field, something that, people that had seen all the movies and read the comics and seen some of the TV series, even the cartoon versions, this was unlike anything we had seen before. It was a very bold vision that they had, no pun intended, for WandaVision. And they really knocked it out of the park in my mind. I had very little complaints about that whole series. The only issue I had there was just what they kind of did with the villain, but we won't spoil anything if you're still catching up. Other than that, my expectations really high. I wanted it to be kind of like WandaVision, was give us something that we're not expecting. And we can get into this a little bit, but the first episode really kind of set the groundwork for it. I'm hoping that there's more to it, just like we saw with WandaVision.
Yeah, let's not waste any more time. I'm going to put the good old spoiler warning up here for people. So,
gotta do it.
All right. You have been warned. If you have not watched the premiere of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, stop this podcast, go pop on Disney Plus and watch the episode and come back. Otherwise, you're about to be spoiled. So You've been warned. It's not our fault anymore.
It's been out for 72 hours. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, come on. It's a 47-minute block of your life. You can find time to do that. But anyway, let's get to this episode here. And I got to say, am I the only one here? I felt a little underwhelmed after I watched it. I don't know. It's just the bar from WandaVision being so high with all of the twists and turns and the excellent acting. This, going back to the more traditional Marvel, and this is a very slow burn of an episode, I felt like I was a little underwhelmed.
You're not wrong. I felt the same way. I thought it was good, not great. I think part of my issue is that I'm more of a fan of the Wanda, Thor, Spider-Man than Captain America, Iron Man, Hawkeye, Black Widow. So I'm more of a fan of the ones that kind of have those kind of godly or mutated powers, or just because I love the way that they represent those characters. Captain America, obviously a super soldier, pretty cool, but still the action was more hand-to-hand combat and more like aerial combat using, planes and helicopters and things like that, and not so much pure unexpected power. And so just not as a huge fan of the traditional, beat 'em up type fighting. My expectations, as I said, were very high for it, but I was underwhelmed a little bit by the fact that instead of just that true one character that is getting the sole focus, I actually think it hurts the show a little bit from an intro standpoint to have two characters with lots of subplots. I'm not sure who to invest more of my time in and effort and care into. Is it Sam or is it Bucky, the Winter Soldier? So I was a little underwhelmed, but I also understood that there was a lot of people that were a little, what is this after the first episode of WandaVision? Honestly, a lot of people that I've spoken to, and I can see this, I was bought in right away, just because I love Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen. But probably by episode 3, let's see where we're at if we feel the same way. I still think that they have some tricks up their sleeve. They've invested a lot of time and money and marketing behind this. So I'm really hoping that it does better. But if I was going to rank like here we go, on a scale from 1 to 10, I would probably have given it maybe like a 7, as in terms of my like, wow, that was amazing. I can't wait for next week. I'm more so like, okay, I'll watch it again next week, but give me something to really go off of. I was really hoping that we get a little bit more bad guy in the first episode. They kind of just teased it.
Yeah, I think this is one of those right now on your scale where I'm kind of like a 6. I'm like, it was good. I'll watch it next week, but it's not going to be the first thing I turn on Friday morning. Maybe I'll wait till after lunch. Yeah.
How did you feel about kind of the two sides of how the episode is running, where you're seeing, basically you're seeing the aftermath of Endgame a few months later. Clearly this takes a place around or just after the time that WandaVision had come out. So what did you think really of the difference between Sam's storyline and Bucky's storyline?
I think it's in terms of the structure of the episode. I think the problem I had with the whole thing was that we start off right away. We had that amazing action sequence at the beginning when Falcon is over in Tunisia trying to help the military pilot. We see the fun aerial fight. We get the awesome camera pan when you see the bad guys in the helicopter. The camera slowly pans to the right. You see he's sitting in the helicopter already. I was dying of laughter when that happened. But we go from that to basically we have the ceremony with the retired Cap shield, and then we sort of have like home beat of Sam's storyline, home beat of Bucky storylines, cutting back and forth. There was never really a flow to either story at that point.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I feel like they needed to get us reinvested a little bit more into, we knew that Bucky was still struggling, right? We've known that he was, brainwashed for decades, and he's still dealing with the repercussions. But really hitting home at, I couldn't really buy into the whole Bucky storyline still. And I said this to a couple of our friends. One of your frequent podcast guests, Nick Frietta, I was talking to him offline about this, and I'm just having a hard time with the fact that nobody in Wakanda, and I know Bucky was part of the blip, but nobody addressed his his real mental health issues. I had a really hard time with the fact that like Bucky is ignoring Sam's text messages. Like they just, came back. They win essentially. Obviously, they had a couple losses in Endgame, but they should be bonded and close together. The last time we saw them was at the end of Endgame there when Cap is passing the shield. They were on good terms. Why are we now doing this thing where they're no longer talking and they're going to go back and they each got their problems? And I just, it's like, why can't they be on the same page? But now there's a new serious threat that's going to test them in individual ways and make them prove that they have to get the mantle of Captain America. And I get that it's the first episode and we might get there, but like, it's like they every time we take a step forward, it feels like we're also taking a step back. So it's kind of like we don't need to keep hitting home on the same thing. It feels like Bucky has been moping around here for a long time, and not only just in our time, but also in the Marvel timeline. So it just seems like he's got to get over that fact that he did all these bad things. So I don't know. The same way that they bounced back between those two storylines, and it just felt like it was a little slow there. They could kind of have pushed things along a little bit more in the first episode.
Yeah, in terms of the not putting it together right away, I get the story purpose of that, because these are two characters who never really interacted on their own. They always were interacting through Steve Rogers as Captain America. And sort of like, if you and I were like not like good friends, and we both, let's say use Nick for example, if we were both friends with Nick and he was the common ground here, and then all of a sudden Nick just moves to Europe and we can't see him anymore, we might not be talking to each other all the time because we were friends because we were friends with Nick. I can get that point where like they have not had this time together and said, okay, like we haven't spent a ton of time just the two of us, so maybe that's why they go off in their separate orbits and this event brings them together. But I think we could have done it a lot faster, because at this point of the show, I mean, this felt a lot like the first episode of Defenders, where we were sort of bringing together the 4 Netflix series. And the first episode was just, here's going on in Daredevil's world. Here's going on in Luke Cage's world. And then it took them like 3 episodes to bring everyone together. I don't want them to go at that same pace.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. The only thing I would say is that, if Nikki did go off to Europe and you and I were still friendly, but not best friends, if you texted me, I'd still respond to you, like it just seems ridiculous that like Bucky all of a sudden is so hurt that he's not going to respond to a text message from Sam. So when they had that line in the episode, I'm just like, oh man, like Bucky is that separated and isolated again. Like, it felt like they owed it to each other in honor of Cap to still stay in touch is my thing. I thought that they had the bond of Steve, and losing Steve, well, once again, we can talk about that, but we're not sure if we completely lost. There's no confirmation of whether he's dead or alive still out there. So maybe they haven't lost him, but I just figured that was just strange that, and we know they're going to connect. It's called Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So maybe I'm harping on something that doesn't need to be said here for too long, but I just felt like from a plot line, you don't need to back us up that far. Let's say, okay, that they both have these separate home issues. Bucky's trying to build a life now. Sam is trying to help his family and create a new legacy for his family. Totally fine with that. But, let's have them come back together. I would have loved something like at the Shield retiring ceremony there. The two of them are both there and somebody in the crowd steps up and says, well, you should challenge me for the title of Captain America. And that could have been the introduction of Walker, who, we're going to find out at the end of the episode is the new Captain America. So, but long story short, I just felt like there was a couple things that seemed very slow. So
the problem with that is the show is called Falcon and Winter Soldier, and we only have 6 episodes. It's not 9 like WandaVision was. And we have spent 1/4 of the 6 without them together. So you have to wonder at what point you have to assume with the pacing they're going to show up together next week. It's just, I feel like you could have gotten there a little faster. Maybe had them meet up at the end of this episode if you wanted to set this up. But I mean, we're going to have still a little plot to go through to get them together.
It's a battle, right, for Marvel and for Disney to try to, fill the time as these next few movies continue their delayed production. I mean, Black Widow just got delayed again. So, it's kind of figuring out this timeline. So I understand why they're coming out with these series, which they can release 1 episode a week and give you your fill. But once again, I still had some issues there with the plot line itself. I enjoyed the one scene though, and I don't know how you felt about it early in the episode where Bucky was having the therapy session and I don't know if you did this too. I paused my episode right when you could see his notebook of who he's making amends with, because I was looking for certain names. If I like recognized any of them, I wrote them all down. But the fifth name on his list says Zemo.
Yeah.
So, and we all know that Zemo is going to be a big issue on here. So I'm curious if that was kind of like, I was looking all over for Easter eggs. I don't know. Were you the same way after WandaVision? Because there was a million Easter eggs in WandaVision and I couldn't find as many. I was trying to pause to see street signs and background things when Bucky is in, kind of coming out of the restaurant. And I don't know. Did you feel the same way, or that is Marvel training your brain the same way as mine now, where it's like you're looking for these Easter eggs?
I was looking for as much here as I was in WandaVision. WandaVision, I was always like kind of looking for like, oh, like what's this reference? Like, like where we meet. This is where the theorizing sort of went off the rails in WandaVision. You're not doing a ton of theorizing here in this show. And I also think I think the only one I was confused about is that point when in Bucky's storyline when he's meeting with the older Asian man, I was confused if it was his buddy from his army unit as an older man. But I don't think it is. So that's the one I was confused at. And I looked at it, I don't think it was.
Yeah, they didn't actually tell us why he was meeting him for lunch every Tuesday. Yep. It was just that he's walking, all of a sudden he sees like these two guys arguing in an alleyway, and oh, this is his best friend. Why is it his best? It felt like too much of sloppy writing to just kind of throw. Bucky's not talking to Sam, but he's best friends with this old Asian man, and he has lunch with them every Tuesday. And then we find out that they this happens to be the father of someone that we saw in that first sequence, his nightmare that he kills. So it's kind of just like, okay, is it a wow moment? Like, look at these. But once again, there's certain things that if you're going to introduce these things to us as viewers, we deserve a proper background for them. And I didn't feel like that was one. So
yeah. I think by far Bucky's still on the weaker of the two, because there was not a lot.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Because like all he's doing the whole is he's in the therapy session is fun because you get to see him be like snarky and making fun of and having one liners. The therapist takes the notepad out and gets him to talk. We have fun, like the bits where we see flash of him walking around saying, "Oh, I'm for my penance." And he's doing these badass action moves. That was funny, but apart from that, there was not a lot we really learned. We saw him go on his date. That didn't go too great for him. We've seen he has nightmares. He's lying about it. That's really all we got from Bucky this week.
Yeah, it felt more like just Falcon with the Winter Soldier, like the first episode, because it was a lot of Sam. And look, I think it's cool. Sam is, in the grand scheme of Marvel characters, like, if you just ask, an average person, are they going to say like, oh, my favorite character is Falcon, or even if you ask somebody who read a lot of comics, they're not going to come up with Falcon right away. So it's interesting that they have chosen Sam to be this lead character. I'm okay with it because, perfectly honest, I think the acting is good, and I think he's got a cool wing set. I thought that was really cool. You mentioned that first action sequence. I thought that that set the bar pretty high. I think Falcon's wings are kind of cooler than Cap's shield, to be freaking honest. I feel like I want to still see what else they can do. But when he kind of like wraps up and protects himself from the bullets, I'm like, dang, that's useful. And just the aerial sequences. I mean, Marvel does such a good job with those. So I want to see Sam fly. But once again, there was a lot of stuff that felt like you were watching like, a more of just a drama TV show. A guy goes home, he's trying to help his family. They can't get a bank loan to keep the boat business going. It's like, what are we doing here? This is Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This is Marvel. Like, I know it's like a legacy thing, but you've got a bigger legacy out there than your personal, family situation. Like, you're trying to decide whether you just decided to turn down the mantle of Captain America. So it's like, did it feel necessary? And I don't know. I just felt like they could do other things than have us dive into Sam's background. So I don't know. I did like seeing Don Cheadle though. That was great.
Yeah, I mean, as you said with Bucky, there's really one arc, his thing. Sam had 3 different things going on here. We had the whole subplot with him turning the shield down. We had his family drama, and we had the whole terrorist subplot where one of his army colleagues is basically tracking a terrorist cell. That was the 3 things going on there. I'll start with the one with him turning the shield down, his conversation with Rhodey after the ceremony, I do think it was very cool to see like two of like the very few like before Black Panther, two of the original like Black characters in the MCU like have this conversation about like what it means to like for their place in the Marvel universe, and they did a good job here sort of addressing the element of, hey, like, you know what, like maybe this country is not ready to see a Black man carry the Captain America shield, and Sam like implies that that's sort of the reason why he didn't take it.
Yeah, and that honestly, I'm pretty sure that was depicted in the comic books as well. So that's straight out of what was done in the comics. I think that they're setting us up for the bigger plot. I 100%, I think Sam absolutely should be the Captain America and pick up the mantle, because both Bucky and Sam in the comics both assume the role at various points. The comics are so long and drawn out. Like Marvel has to decide, like, what are we going to do? There's a lot of like decisions they just have to make and subplots they got to get rid of. But it should absolutely be Sam. So maybe that's why they gave us more of his background in the first episode, and they're setting us up for more of him. And Bucky is going to be supportive, but he's not going to be the guy. He's going to help win the fight. But yeah, very much. I think it's cool to see Rhodey as his mentor of sorts, encouraging him to have the mantle. And we're going to see more of Don Cheadle's character as we go along, because I'm pretty sure he's starring in the future Disney Plus series, right? I think it's called Armor Wars or something like that.
Yeah, he has his own. He's going to be the star in Armor Wars. So from what I've gathered here, he's sort of like just like a supporting guy. He might show up here and there. He's not going to be there every episode.
Yeah, I hope we get more of those. I hope we get more cameos of other characters that pop up and surprise us that we've seen, or I haven't heard any rumors or anything, but the same way they did with Kat Dennings' character in WandaVision. We hadn't seen her since what, the second Thor movie?
Yeah,
something in the Dark World, right?
2013.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I'd love to get more of those kinds of characters that we've seen in the past introduced. So this new agent that's out in the field fighting this terrorist group, from what I understand, I don't remember too much because I didn't read all the comics, but I'm assuming he's a bigger role later on. And I don't know whether they're going to make him that or they're just going to leave him as a good contact. But you're right. It seems like this first big issue for Sam is whether or not to hold the mantle. And it's like, Captain America gave you the shield. Like, if he felt you were worthy enough, you were worthy enough. So giving it up, I'm just like, I don't know. I think he should have kept it. And then there should have been somebody who challenged him for it, not just to give it up and it's given somewhere else. And now he's got to fight to prove it. So I just think that plot line could have gone a different way. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll be eating my words in a couple episodes, but you're right. We only get 6 episodes, and it's not like they're like Game of Thrones hour-and-a-half episodes here. So, they got to get to it pretty quick.
Yeah, they do. I think we'll circle back to the Captain America reveal at the end of the episode. The second thing I wanted to hit on was obviously like the terrorist plot. It was a cool action sequence when the soldier Torres goes undercover, and you have all the fights of the guys in the masks, and he gets basically his ass handed to him by the head of the Flag Smashers. And I think very, very chilling like iconography there, considering like what's been going on in this country. And Marvel unironically has a timely like villainous like reference here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, as soon as I saw the face masks and where they were in the world, it made me think of V for Vendetta a little bit. Like, I love that heist idea of everybody wearing the same mask at the same time and not knowing who's doing what. Like that was chilling, actually, that scene a little bit. And just how all of that sequence went down. I'm very, very curious, that chaos that's going on over there. I'm curious to see how big a theme that is, and whether that's the introduction of Baron Zemo, or reintroduction, or whether there's some other super soldier, because obviously we saw that agent getting his butt kicked by somebody who had crazy strength and crazy speed and power and reflexes. So I'm really curious to see who's behind the mask there. The way that they had the long hair too, it made me think, this is just like a new version of the Winter Soldier. So are we going to get a Winter Soldier versus new version of it? Are we getting a quick glimpse of, is it really Hydra behind it or some other political power? So it's very timely, as you said, kind of that mass chaos in the streets type feel. But once again, I'm curious who's the one that, really was punching people, through city streetlights.
Yeah.
And that's going to be another one of our bad guys. So
Yeah, it also has a lot of Mr. Robot vibes too, in terms of how like the hacker group there always used to use the Monopoly Man mask to sort of like hide their own chaos acts going on. I think that was interesting. I think the Sam home life thing, I get why they put it in there because it's something we don't really explore in the Marvel universe. Is like, what's it like for like the family of the superhero? And you do get that interesting point in the bank where like he's the banker's like, oh, this is awesome, you're Falcon, but I'm not helping you. Like, and it's just like a cold reality. Like, hey, like you saved the world, but doesn't mean I'm gonna help you with your business. And I just think it's very fascinating because it's somebody's joked on Twitter. It's like, hey, Tony Stark didn't leave these guys any money when he bit the farm.
yeah, I was kind of thinking about that too. I'm like, it's never been addressed, whether they were being paid or compensated in some way for their services saving the world multiple times. So I thought that was clever because that never has been addressed. Tony Stark's really the only one that we know has money, or did. I think what you said is interesting. We've explored, Wanda's past. Now we've looked into the trauma that her and Pietro grew up with. We've explored that life. We don't know her current home life, or at least we kind of do, or her vision of it. But then, we've looked a little bit into, obviously Thor. We know a little bit more about his family. I think we know a little bit about Peter Parker, but you're right. This was different because Sam isn't a mutant side of things or mutated. He is just purely a guy with a normal, yes, he is a superhero, but we've always thought of Sam as more of a support than like one of the big five that could really like get things done. So yeah, it's interesting. Marvel is exploring some of these family lives. We saw it with Hawkeye. We saw that in Endgame and Infinity War as well. So they've taken little shots where they try to bring the family in. I'm assuming this new Black Widow movie is going to address, obviously Scarlett Johansson's character's background. It's been represented multiple times, but we're going to get really, her full upbringing as well. So this is just different. You're right. It felt different than the way that we've looked at the family members of these superheroes for a long time now. And I get it. It just ate up a lot of the episode. That's what bothered me. It was like a good 15 minutes in an hour-long episode. So
yeah, I mean, it was like 45-minute episode basically.
45. Yeah, you're right. Because it seems like they always throw us off. You see the runtime, but you never know when it's actually going to end, because then there's a long credit sequence and you have to watch the whole credits to see if there's any spoilers in it. I found that there's only one Easter egg, but we can talk about it at the end. That's in the credits. So there's no post-credit scene. I'm assuming we're going to get them because there's only 6 episodes. So make sure you watch the credits as well.
Yeah, I always tell people when you have these Disney Plus shows or Netflix shows, like always watch till they ask you to watch the next episode. Because at that point, there's nothing coming.
Yeah, and you got to look at every little thing too, if you care. I mean, they're never going to put in anything that they won't address later at some point. So, or it comes out on the internet. So,
yeah. Also, we get to the point at the end of the episode where we have the reveal that they have a new Captain America, and it is this guy. I forget what was his name again. Was it Russell or?
The character who plays him is a guy named Wyatt Russell.
Oh, that's what I was confused.
And he's been in a few things. TV, movies that you probably recognize him in, and he has the face of a really good bad guy, and I think he's a really good actor just from what I've seen him in. I recognized him right away, so I'm hoping that he's as good. I believe the character in the comics, his name is John Walker.
Yes.
And it's in the comics from what I remember, and I did a quick look up on this because I couldn't remember. I remember the character he plays. It was U.S. agent, actually, I think is what he has other mantles that he goes by. And he's more of like not a super soldier, but more of he does the bidding of politicians and the government, and whether or not their intentions are good or bad, that's up for debate. So he's more of kind of a vessel for powerful political people to go out and do his thing. He has both been an ally and an enemy to Captain America in the comics. So once again, Marvel is messing with us. We don't know whether he's going to be a bad guy or be out with a hidden agenda. Is he another Hydra agent in disguise? We don't know what's going to happen here, but I have to assume that there's going to be something that happens very quick, Mike, that connects the dots between the Flag Smashers, this new Captain America, and whatever these, we got a little hint that there's these political or governmental agents that might be infiltrated by Hydra. That seems to be a recurring theme in all of the Captain America movies. Is that none of the guys that seem like good guys are actually good guys. So we'll see if Sam and Bucky can deal with it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting too, because I think this sets up a good point for Sam to get him motivated as well, because he retired the shield and said, hey, no one else should have this thing. And then the government turned around and says, you know what, we're giving it to another white dude. We're not gonna kind of hint we didn't want to give it to you, but we'll give it to generic agent white guy who looks like he should be on the Wheaties box. That I think will be a motivating factor for Sam a little bit.
And rightfully so. What's interesting to me is that Sam was selfless. I don't think that they said you can't have it. I just think that Sam made the right moral decision. And then the government decided to do their bidding. So once again, very timely to what's going on. You're right. The writing for Marvel, they've always addressed in a very subtle, clever way what's kind of the beat of what's going on in the world. And I really do hope that we get to the point where it's Sam that carries the mantle. Bucky's a great character, but we do need more African-American Black superheroes, just for the simple sake that they deserve that time and title. And Sam in the comics is a fantastic Captain America for many, many years. So I think that Falcon is cool. I like the wings, and I hope that they decide to feature those more often. But rightfully so, somebody's got to carry that shield, and it should be Sam.
Yeah, I think it will be too. And I think that's about it for the episode. I do wonder though, considering how the pandemic has changed things, and this is going to be the first show because this was supposed to come out first, and then it was supposed to be WandaVision. I wonder if we're lower on this, and if we had just lived in a world where WandaVision came out second, this came out first. I wonder if our expectations would have been different.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder if you can go on Disney Plus and watch. They have a show on there called Avengers Assembled, and it is the making of WandaVision. And they interview all the cast. They show you how they made the show, how they filmed in front of a live audience. It was basically like putting on a play for the first few episodes. And then they talk about the transition, and you can just tell there was so much time and care and effort that went into the making of WandaVision. Maybe it was so good or so unusual that they felt like that maybe when they saw the final recordings of Falcon Winter Soldier, it wasn't as good and wasn't going to really. They needed to start these individual series off with a bang. And plus, WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier are very close in timeline. They're both dealing with the after effects of Endgame. So they're probably within months of each other. So I think that they probably looked at it and said, there's a lot of expectation for the series to come out. Maybe they decided to say WandaVision was better. So let's put it first, and then Falcon and Winter Soldier come out, and then we'll kind of sandwich it with what we're going to get next with. Do you remember what the next one is after this? Is it Loki that's supposed to come out?
Yeah.
I have really high expectations for Loki because he is, and I don't think I'm just saying this, but I think he is probably the most entertaining of all the characters that they've introduced. And Tom Hiddleston is so good. So it's like, that one I'm going to put up, that better hit me with a 9 right off the bat. So this one, I had high expectations expectations, but that was just because of WandaVision. Maybe I should have kind of dialed it back a little bit, and maybe a 7 is a good score for what we got between the two of those. So
Yeah, I think part of it also was like the original plan was I could see this sort of being the companion piece to Black Widow, where they're two similar types of product. Whereas you could see also we're going to flow from WandaVision to Loki, so it's more sense thematically. I think this is sort of a point where we had production was further along on WandaVision. They had to do more work on Falcon and Winter Soldier because they had to do a lot of overseas shootings. It's one of those where WandaVision was done first. So, okay, we're going to get something out instead of pushing everything back even further on the timeline, because that's probably how Black Widow. I mean, they said recently that they're going to wait to the last second to decide they're going to leave it on May 7th. They're push it back a couple of months. So I hope they leave it alone, because I feel like the further you get away from the timeline this movie is set in, because it's between Civil War and Infinity War. I mean, the further what you're getting away from those movies. I mean,
she's dead. So yeah, she died.
She died, and she had this time period was in 2017. Basically, we're talking about. So we're talking about almost 4 years later. At what point did the casual audience not care anymore?
Right, and you know, it's very much. I think people will take whatever they can get because we're so starved for content. And everybody that's a true Marvel fan of the series and movies is probably so. I felt this way a little bit. I like, you know, look, did I love, you know, Robert Downey Jr.? I was like, we got a lot of Tony Stark over the years. His character wasn't as important to me as maybe Thor or Spider-Man. Or even Hulk for that matter. But I was worried. I was worried about what the future was going to be and whether it was going to be as good. And I still think by the fact of putting out the Black Widow movie, it's still bringing up these feelings that we had when Tony Stark was still alive. And I feel like we need to move on from it. So by putting out a movie where a character who died at a pivotal moment in order to save the world, that happened now several years ago, not just in the MCU, but in real life. So I'm with you on that. I feel like we need to kind of address her standalone movie, take it because we're all starved for content. But once again, these new series are now really moving us ahead, and it's going to be weird to go back. So I feel like they need to put it out on May 7th.
Yeah, even it means you're doing the split model. I think you have to put it out. I don't think you can push every movie, keep pushing every movie back to try and get max out the money. I think at some point you're gonna have to bite the bullet and just put it out.
Yeah, we're moving on from these characters. If a few years from now, when we've introduced all these other characters that they're gonna do, and they want to just give us a surprise cameo, you know, Chris Evans has decided to pick up the shield again and be Captain America and surprise everybody in one of these big movies. Great. But right now we're Doctor Strange, we're Wanda. Who knows where I don't want to say spoilers alert, but where White Vision is. You know, we're moving ahead with this different set of characters, and X-Men are going to be obviously introduced to finish up here, you know, Easter egg or whatever you want to call it. You know, I don't know if you read this, but there is a spoiler-ish or lead-in in the credits of the first episode that I saw online, where if you watch, there's a split second where a little quote kind of comes up, and in the quote, it references a city that is critical in the X-Men timeline. And I don't necessarily know the origins of it, but everybody was freaking out when they saw this one name of a city. It's a very specific city from the comics, and it's referencing, are we introducing X-Men into the Marvel universe? Everybody's been waiting for it. And there was obviously, you know, when Evan Peters' character, his version of Pietro Maximoff was introduced in WandaVision, everybody's like, oh, this is going to be it. You know, like, here's the crossover. But then we found out that was just a fake. So
it was a real boner.
Yeah, it was a real boner. You're right. For those that haven't seen WandaVision, take a look. But that was supposed to be it, because, you know, he was the Quicksilver in that version. And, you know, we're supposed to have that crossover at some point, and it's been teased and teased and teased. So now they're even teasing us in these series by dropping the names of X-Men related cities where big fights and sequences have happened. So, you know, maybe they're just doing it so that people like us are stay invested in it. But hopefully there's something to it, because I love the X-Men. Gambit is still my favorite character of all time, so I would love to see more. And I hated the way they portrayed him back in those other X-Men movies. So I love Remy LeBeau. I was hoping that Channing Tatum was rumored to do a standalone Gambit movie, and it never happened. So because the directors quit on it and the writing team had a struggle with it. So I still want to see some more Remy LeBeau.
Yeah,
so that's my.
Who knows? They're just gonna troll the fans until they actually do it. But I think that's a good place to stop here, Dan. I want to thank you for all the time. Really appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can you follow social media? Keep us some of the stuff you're up to.
Sure. Active on Twitter, NFL free agency right now. I've been sitting here waiting for the Colts to do something. And other than signing a couple of their own guys, they've done nothing. We have a serious issue at pass rush on the edge, what most teams do. And we don't have a starting left tackle at the moment. And we have no depth on the offensive line. So glaring holes for this team. And I am active on Twitter at DMart207 or Out of Town Fan Pod. You can follow either one of those accounts. But other than that, thanks for having me on, Mike. This is fun. I'm hoping that this series just gets better and better, and that we've now the bar has been set a little bit lower. And let me say this: I'm an open door for them to pull me in and make it even better than WandaVision. So we'll see what they do next week.
All right, we will see, Dan. Thanks again.